republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call and declaration of conflicts of interest, please.
Councilmember Abram. Here and none. Councilmember Bixel.
Here and none.
Vice Mayor Franco.
Here and none.
Councilmember Moniz.
Here and none.
Mayor Bublak.
Hearing none. All right, approval of agenda as posted or amended.
I move to amend 10A and B behind 8D.
Okay, hold on. Behind 8D, you want 10A and B. Is there a second to that?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Abram.
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco.
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz.
Yes.
Mayor Bublak.
Yes, and it passes with a 5-0. All right, proclamations or briefing. We have Mr. Petrolakis.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. George Petrolakis, City Attorney. Tonight will be a very brief briefing on the status of the facility at 1617 Colorado Avenue. Basically, we wanted to inform the council that on October 9th, 2024, a certificate of occupancy was issued for the facility. We will have a fuller briefing at one of the next two meetings where we will give a wrap up to the community about the staff's thinking of the matter and what we went through since February of this year, largely because the police department's in some informal discussions with the facility about some voluntary measures to be taken. And so we'd like to report on those also at the same time. So that's all I have tonight, and we'll see you at the next, the November or December meeting.
Thank you. At this time, we have public participation. This time set aside for people who have filled these out or afterwards. You have 3 minutes. There is a timer here and here as you speak, and you may speak to items on the agenda or off the agenda, but we may not be able to respond, and I may direct you elsewhere. So at this time, I have a few cards, and we will go with Vanita.
Madam Mayor, Council, Department Heads, I have this beautiful cage here, and this was due to some very generous donations from the past. Thank everybody who did that, by the way. And the problem is there's no cat in there. And another problem is there's no money to spay and neuter, at least not that I've been able to find out. We are in desperate need of spay-neuter vouchers. The way it was the spay-neuter vouchers were $80 from the animal control. And you all set the budgets. We need some money in there. There's cats and kittens and puppies all over the place. And people have learned that I've kind of become a part of that, I guess, as an individual, and people are telling me about specific colonies, and I'm happy to go trap and neuter, but you know, we need money to do that from somewhere, and I'm hoping your generosity could be the same as it used to be. Let's see. So spay neuter vouchers. The reason I set a budget and some shelters available from last time is because there has to be some kind of expansion at the shelter. It is an emergency. It really is. There's so many animals out there. And I put that budget together, and it took a long time, effort, gasoline, because I drove around to look at sheds and so forth. And when I see all the money floating around and how much everything costs, what I'm and others would be asking for if they bother to come here to speak also, what I'm asking for isn't a lot. It's a drop in the bucket comparatively. And you would see a return on that. There wouldn't be any little kittens running around and cats and dogs all over the place. And they are all over the place. So if you could find it in somewhere in the budget to at least take a look at what I'd given you, is Lieutenant Shaw still the Animal Control Director?
Yes.
Okay. I Gmailed him, but no response. He's probably busy. But okay, I did do that, and maybe he could talk to you about the handout. I hope he got one. Let's see. What else do I wanted to say? I only have 42 seconds left. Really, that's it. To take a look at the budget and what I showed you it's so easy to work with a little budget, little bit of money, not millions of dollars, just a little bit. And you could help us all so much out here. And really, that's all I have. Thank you.
Curtis? Oops, sorry.
11 o'clock last night, someone was doing donuts in front of our house. I live at 709 Flower Street. He did like 20, 30 donuts just going around and around and around and around, and then took off, and fireworks going off still. So
Captain, you got it? Thank you.
we tried to get his license plate, but because our camera faces the street, so if we can get the license plate, we'll give it to you guys. So thank you.
Ruining our new road. All right, Kyle?
Brand new road.
Good evening, everybody. Hi, thanks for letting me speak. So I had an unusual encounter. So I'm an electric car owner, but I also drive a motorcycle, and I have all over the place. Most of my charging is done at home, but every now and again I need to occupy a public charging facility. I was very surprised when I was out here over in front of a grocery outlet, and multiple gas vehicles are parked in the spots. So I went and tried to do a little investigating here and figure out who do we talk to. I went to every single business in that strip, and nobody could tell me who was the property owner to report this to. So I did the equivalent 311, called around, and I can't remember who I spoke to. I'm sorry, I should have wrote that down. But they ultimately told me, call the non-emergency police number. So I did. And I was very glad and appreciative of the officer for calling me back. And he said he was as surprised and confused as I was, because he said, there's nothing I can do about it. And I said, why not? He said, well, our codes are not up to date. We can't treat it like a parking violation in a handicap spot or a yellow or something like that. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound right. Because normally I'll just move on somewhere else. Okay. But it's very repetitive. Pretty much every time I'm out there, whether it's for Dollar Tree or at the gym or whatever it is, there's one or two out there. And it's happened to me, like I said, pretty much every single time. So Mayor Blue, like you said, to potentially refer me to somewhere else.
Sure.
To get that, I would really appreciate that information to help me progress this, because I think that we can all pretty much agree that that's not right. So that's all I've got. I wanted to just share that story, and hopefully maybe there's something already in the works.
Maybe offline, have a conversation right there with the captain.
Okay.
Jacob right there, please.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
All right, we got a couple, we got Keisha. It's a class or something, yeah? Is there more than just one of you guys coming together, solo? What do you got?
Hello, I guess.
Okay.
Hi. This is my first time here, so I'm kind
Welcome.
of nervous.
No, don't worry about it.
Thank
No
you.
problem.
I come from Stan State. In
The
our
Warriors.
In our class, our professor spoke about one of the laws about how lying down in public spaces and or sitting is prohibited as of August 27, 2024. And we kind of thought it was humorous because in our class, he was like, as of right now, you guys are all breaking the law. And I guess out of curiosity, just for like me and like the students in class, I was just wondering, because myself, I think the way it's being addressed, I mean, it's efficient to an extent. Obviously, it'll get homeless people out of our city, but it's going to get pushed into other cities. So I was just wondering your guys' thoughts on the law, and maybe if any like revisions might be done on the law.
So it wouldn't be illegal on state property where the campus is, but perhaps if you can make sure we have your information, we can have either our attorney or the police chief get a hold of you guys and talk to you.
Okay,
Right.
thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
She got credit for being here tonight.
Do you get credit for being here tonight?
I guess I
Sweet. All right, and then you spoke, so look at that. All right, I don't have any more blue cards. Are there any other people who wanted to speak this evening? Uh-huh.
Good evening, council staff and Turlock residents. Milt Treeweiler. Tonight I'm addressing my fellow Turlock residents and our staff members. The California Election Code, as defined by the Secretary of State, defines your domicile as the place where you live, where your habitation is fixed or where you intend to remain
Mr.
or
Treeweiler?
return to whenever
Mr.
you're absent
Treeweiler?
from it. Election Code 321, 349.
Point of
This
order.
is all part of your stuff now. You can't have this moment to be electioneering, sir.
I haven't mentioned anything about elections. You're mentioning something
No,
about
sir, you
elections.
just
I'd
did.
like my time back. Please stop my time.
We are not going to continue to have stuff that you're putting out on pamphlets. That's not appropriate, sir. If you want to cover some other things, that's fine.
I want to thank one of our prominent longtime West Side residents for getting the Columbia Pool project restarted. It's a great accomplishment that can be enjoyed by the entire city. It's too bad it was delayed for so long by people at this council that it will cost an additional $4 million to be completed. Let's make our city a city for people who are happy, regardless of who you are, where you're from, or how much money you have. That's what's important here. This council, people on this council have forgotten about what it's like to represent people in their district. They have no idea what that means. They represent the money interests in our city and in our country. They dwell on money. That is what they focus on, what they concentrate on. As far as people don't count, and that's disturbing, very disturbing. And there is a way to change that, and that's hopefully what will happen here soon. It's very disturbing to go, well, okay, I don't want to talk about what I do. But anyway, this needs to be changed. I mean, this is not good, and it's not the way the citizens of Turlock should be treated, and I'm not going to stand for that. So that's the way I see it, and that's the way I believe it should be, and I thank you.
Anyone else who wishes to speak? Yes, come on up, John. I don't say people's last names.
John Gebeline. Hey, I just wanted to, I went to the Turlock Scavenger Free Dump Day, and I wanted to come in, and I called them up, and I told them they did an excellent job of getting people in and out, very organized and everything, and again, free. It's, there's not many things you can say is truly free, but there was a line when I got there. And normally at noon, there's not a line, but there was a line this time. And from the time I got in line to the time I got out of there was 15 minutes. Now that's pretty good, for the return on investment, as they say. So again, kudos for them. But I do want to reiterate something I've said before. It would be nice to have a thing where you can buy a half price or something and go, because I held on to stuff for like 6 months, just because I don't have a lot of money to dump it. I can dump it myself and everything else like that. But, one day or something, why not give people, something that they can buy, a half price thing to come down at whatever time they want and everything else like that. That would help, because, a lot of us have stuff, tree stumps or different things like that need to be gotten out of our yards and things like that and not held on to. So some way that can be done. The second thing I want to say, all around my house, they're tearing up the streets. They're doing all that work and everything. And I just wanted to say they're doing one heck of a job. I go by and look at all the work they've done, the finished product and everything, and I hate spending as much money as we're spending, but it needs to be done, and the people that are doing it are doing an excellent job, at least to my opinion. Thanks.
Glad to hear it. Anyone else? Justin?
Well, good evening, City of Turlock, Turlock City Council, Justin Farkas, representing the Office of Assemblyman Juan Alanis, just coming to provide what will be our final legislative report of the year as our session is finished, and all of the bills that are to be signed for the year have been. So really just coming to highlight some of the hard work that the Assemblyman has been putting in during his first term up in Sacramento, representing the Stanislaus and Merced County region. Assemblyman Alanis was able to pass 16 bills in his first term in the state legislature, and just to provide some context there, it is first among all Republicans by far. and it's actually fourth among first-term legislators on both sides of the aisle. Considering about a quarter of the legislature were considered freshman members, was really high standing in comparison to our colleagues. Really grateful for that. The Assemblyman was also able to secure about $1.4 million in direct funding from the state budget going toward park renovations, beautification projects, and a West Side mobile mental health clinic, which is something that we're really proud of as well. Aside from that, he was, as a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, they were able to work with Congressman Duarte and secure funds for an east-west conveyance project out of the San Joaquin River until the Delta Mendota Canal, and that project is going to be providing more agricultural water out of the San Joaquin than the Houdini of Sites Reservoir. If you guys have heard of that project that is supposed to be coming, we've actually passed a bond over about 10 years ago and has yet to break ground yet. So really exciting stuff we've managed to work on this year. Really grateful to be representing you all. One thing I want to know, anyone who knows the Assemblyman knows his background, understands he comes from a law enforcement background, and public safety has been a major area that he has been focused on in his legislation, but we have expanded in a much broader areas than I think even he anticipated. The Assemblyman passed bills regarding child's well-being. The Nevaeh's Youth Sports Act is one of the ones he's most proud of, helping keep young kids safe at their sporting events and other extracurricular activities with AED access, education, which is something that has really, we've found to be a little bit of a pioneer on instituting financial literacy study for grades 7 through 12 and expanding career technical education, as well as food security, insecurity issues, helping donate some produce to our local school districts that feed our kids. So running out of time here. Thank you guys for your time, and we'll see you at the next one.
Anyone else? I don't know if you're flipping me off or getting my attention.
No, I
just
wouldn't
kidding.
do that. Gee,
I'm teasing you.
I know you're kidding. So good evening. I'll ask if there's maybe an update on the spreadsheet that the vice mayor asked for, and God bless you for asking for that. I think it's very important, not just for the council, for the public, but also for city management to be able to know the projects that are being worked on, what their projected schedules are, what their actual schedules are, what their projected funding is, what their actual funding is. I think I've mentioned this before that, I believe sometimes what potentially could happen is that the council asks for certain things to be done, additional projects, and then sometimes certain portions of the staff, they get overloaded. So they either become very inefficient on all the projects they're working on, or they have to put one particular project aside, and that becomes very delayed. As someone who used to work on 5 different radar designs at the same time, I can understand that. So if we can get an update on that, that would be greatly appreciated. One of the reasons why some of us ask for transparency and accountability is that it builds public trust. And as I think we can all acknowledge, public trust in our institutions nowadays are unfortunately at a very low level. So that's the reason why some of us ask for that. I'll also make one other comment. If I understood right, one of the last meetings, the sewer rates, you talked about passing an ordinance to make sure that it was done on a better schedule as opposed to 11 years. Okay. You need to have some form of check on these projects, checks and balances, to make sure that they're actually being done. And I'll reference back to cannabis. Okay, to where you're smiling, to where multiple aspects of the development agreements and city policies were not followed. So just because somebody passed an ordinance doesn't mean it's going to be followed. Okay, so it's my suggestions. Have a good evening.
Anyone else? Last chance for credit in the class. All right, we will close public comment, bring it back. So consent calendar, are there any items to be removed separate for consideration? If not,
Move to approve.
Second.
Third.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Pixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes on 5-0. And now we get to final readings. Item A. This is Ms. Warner. You got all three. But you don't need anything. Hold on, we'll just go. If there's any questions before I open it, okay, we'll open it to the public. Anyone wishing to speak on the development agreement with Perfect Union? Okay, we will close it and bring it back.
Move to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. We call the roll, please.
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Pixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
No, and it passes with a 4-1. Second item is Firehouse. I will open it to the public. Anyone wishing to speak about this specific DA? Closing public comment, bringing it back.
Move to approve. Second.
Whoa, whoa.
Jinx.
I don't even know what to tell you, but call the roll.
Who's up first?
You can do it.
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Pixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
No, it passes 4-1. And finally, JDI Farms, Inc., their development agreement. I'm opening it to the public. Closing public comment.
Move to approve.
Second.
Oh, dang, Bixel jumped in there. All right, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Pixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Nope. All right, passes 4-1.
Mayor, do you want to explain your vote to the students?
Oh, sure. I am forever against marijuana. It's still federally prohibited, so you can see where I'd just be a no. Anyhow.
As a former police officer, maybe.
Oh, yeah, former police officer, yeah. Anyhow, and allergic to all of that stuff. So, Mr. Fisher, it's your turn, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Bublak,
After this one.
members of the
I'm
council.
sorry, one second. Question? Okay, I'm sorry.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here to discuss the final reading of the ordinance regarding the sewer rate adjustment and make the necessary amendments to the Turlock Municipal Code. So this is the second reading of this ordinance, which will enable future modifications of sewer rate through council resolution instead of it being in the code themselves, along with addressing other cleanup items in our code. These sections affected by the ordinance include Article 1, which is the general provisions, Article 4, fees and charges, Article 5, wastewater treatment facility capacity charges, Article 7, sewer service user rates, Article 9, testing methods and procedures, and Article 11, sewer lines and reimbursement. These amendments are necessary for streamlining our process to ensure that we have clarity in all of our operations and how we charge things. As you may recall, the recent rate study aimed to establish equitable rates to the cost of service approach. Some of the key points, we have equitable rates, meaning they're equal amongst all customer classes. Cost control, meaning that our charges won't exceed the actual cost of the service. Clarity, the new rate model is a lot easier to understand, a lot easier to administer, and then establish financial reserves and maintaining adequate fiscal solvency, as well as some capital project funding. And we did this all within the 218 process, maintaining compliance. Looking ahead, we expect the revenue increase approximately about from 26.5 million in fiscal year 24-25 to about 30.1 million in 28-29. Without the increase, we potentially face an annual deficit by 28-29, about $8.7 million. We analyzed the revenue contributions by customer classes, and we found that residential customers contribute 60% of the revenue, but only account for about 38.4% of the net revenue requirements. Commercial and institutional, 7.2% of the revenue, 9.2% of the net revenue requirements, and industrial customers provided 32.8% of the revenue and account for 52.4% of the net revenue requirements. This breakdown highlighted just the need for an equitable adjustments to reflect the actual usage associated to those businesses. So on October 8th, the council took the steps to facilitate these. We held a public hearing. No majority protest. which allowed for the adoption of the new rates. The resolution adopted the updated sewer rates and the sewer rate study. The resolution was also passed approving the engineer's report, which basically updated our financial cost estimates on our capital plans, and then the ordinance was introduced, and today we're here reading the second ordinance. So, closing, ask the council to approve the ordinance tonight. These updates were necessary for our adjustment and the clarity.
And Director Fisher, in relation to the question that, will there be something coming soon?
Next
on the
council
agenda?
meeting, there'll be the first reading of a new ordinance to review the sewer, endeavor to review the sewer rates every 5 years.
Outstanding. Any question?
Yes, so you said it all, but I just want to like highlight it and bring it out that the action we took last meeting and what we're finalizing tonight, this is making the rates appropriate for every category, residential, commercial, industrial. So everybody's paying their fair share of what goes into the sewer system, correct?
Yeah, the unit cost, again, is all the same. Everybody pays the same unit cost. The only difference is their contribution to the plan.
And sort of the bottom line, if you can't read the multi-page study, that the majority of residential rates are going down. And unfortunately, with the classifications, industrial rates are going up considerably.
Yeah, that is true. So the residential rates will see a small decrease. Some will see more just based on the fixture units versus the flat rate cost. But the residential or the industrial, significant industrial user rates were considerable increase, about 2.17 or 2.17 times the previous rate on the average.
Okay. We'll open it to the public. Anyone wishing to speak regarding this final reading? Bill?
I just want to make a quick comment on the industrial rates. This is equitable and it is just, and we know that. That's been determined. But I do hear some industry actually basically complaining about this rate change. And I don't really see how they can justify that. If we're going to have efficiency in manufacturing, we have to establish methods of assuring that we have that efficiency. And the way we do that is charging everyone an equitable rate, so everyone's paying their fair share. Industry has the ability to raise the rates of their product. So they may have to raise the rates of their gallon of milk, almond milk, 1 penny per container. And that's not going to really have any direct effect on us as consumers. But they really have to be responsible for what they're doing, because if they're not responsible for what they're doing, we are subsidizing pollution that's actually in the long run hurting us. It's very, you hear about the plastic and how the plastic industry has created pollution all over our planet. And it's engulfing our entire planet. It's actually in our blood veins, in the bottom of our lungs. We have very small molecules of plastic. They are forever chemicals. They're not going to disappear from our environment until we regulate the disappearance of it. And actually, California just passed a very good law today, or in the last couple days, where all clothing items will have to be recycled by the manufacturers, and that's the way it should be. We should not have to be responsible for the waste that manufacturing produces. And you could go all the way to the fossil fuel industry. We know, science has told us that we are experiencing climate change because of all the carbon dioxide we're expelling into the atmosphere when we drive our cars, when we drive our trucks. And the only way that's going to be alleviated is when the manufacturer or the fossil fuel industry has to do the alleviation. In other words, they should be responsible for these major storms that are 1,000-year storms, because they are the ones who are heating up our planet with all the carbon dioxide that's going into the atmosphere. And this is something we're going to have to work on long range, and this is one of the goals that I would like to see here in Turlock. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yep. Come on up, John.
John Gibbeline. One of the things that well, we always have to be careful of is when we pass rates on to anything, whether it's a hotel tax or anything else like that, it's comparative to what's around us and everything else. So if an industry gets a raise, they have to say, okay, is Ceres cheaper or Modesto or whatever? And industries don't just say we're going to raise prices. They look at the bottom line and say, well, we're going to close, we're going to move it to Mexico, or we're going to go somewhere else. So that's also something that everybody has to look at. We have car companies and everybody else closing down lines and moving to Mexico and everything. So when you raise costs, you have to be aware that people have money invested in a capital society, and they're going to look at the bottom line, whether you think that's good or bad, but they're going to look at it and say, can I make it somewhere else? I remember back in San Jose when I lived there, they had canneries everywhere, and then it just got more and more and more expensive, and they closed them down. They moved them to Mexico, they moved them to Watsonville or whatever. So all this has to do with it and whatever. And those companies do provide jobs for people and everything else. So it's just that it has to be, something that you always have to look at, a comparative rate and where they can, move their manufacturing if they can do it. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Stuck my hand up all the way up.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I know.
I'm easily offended.
Yes, I agree with the last speaker. It's not just as simple as maybe raising the price of almond milk for a penny. You might actually not do an expansion in Turlock, which one of the companies talked about, or they might very well move production to another city where the rates are lower, or to another state. Hillmar Cheese, I don't know if they send their stuff to us, but for example, they have facilities in Texas now, I believe. So we've seen a lot of that in terms of companies being driven out of California in the name of saving the environment. And oh, by the way, what that means is that since even though we have oil resources and we don't produce that much, we actually import a lot of our oil from the Persian Gulf. So, does that make any sense? Okay. And when it comes to the extreme temperatures, NASA released a report about, let me see if I get the name right, the Tonga volcano that exploded, I think 2 years ago, undersea volcano that exploded. If it had been above ground, it would have been like Krakatoa. Okay, and we would be experiencing right now global cooling, substantial global cooling, like what happened when Krakatoa exploded. But because it was underneath the water, NASA estimates that it put 40 billion gallons of water into the atmosphere. And NASA says that water vapor is much more of a greenhouse effect than carbon dioxide. So they actually have said, NASA has said, that we can expect substantially higher temperatures in the next 5 years or so. And that's also the reason why a lot of the climate models have been wacky, because they can't account for the effect of 40 billion gallons of water being thrown into the atmosphere. And I just wanted to say previously, I mentioned before about how it may be equitable across the classes, but not necessarily within the classes. For example, the city of Burlingame uses an average water usage during the typical non-landscape water months of January to April, because they have water metering just like we do to determine what the bill is for residential customers. So even within the class of residential customers, it's not really completely fair. Minor detail. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we will close the public comment and bring it back.
Move to approve. Second.
A motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Pixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, it passes 5-0. Okay, now moving to item 10A, action item. It's you, Mr.
Sorry.
We wanted it to be together so that.
Got it, yeah. Well, thanks again for allowing me to speak here. The action item that you have tonight is to adopt a temporary assistance program for our significant industrial users. This is an outpouring of the October 8th discussion on the sewer rates. Just give you a bit of a brief history on it. The city hired NBS Finance Group in May of 2022 with the objective of updating the sewer rates to meet the revenue needs over the next 5 years. The last year that the rates were increased was in 2013. The goal of the rate studies, again, ensure that they're equitable, ensure they do not exceed the cost of service, and an easy to administer rate model. Goal of the financial plan is to increase the revenue to cover increasing operating expenses, mitigate deficit risk, and maintain adequate reserve coverages for stability and proper debt coverage to make sure that we're able to borrow some money. Following the fiscal analysis, a realignment of the rate was required to ensure the rates were equitable. We discussed in good detail, but it had a significant impact on our significant industrial users, ultimately resulting in an average increase of 217%. Staff met with all of the users in this class to explain the study, understand the concerns, and work with them on ways to reduce their contribution, explore different alternatives, and one of the things that kept coming up is can we stage, can we phase in our rate adjustments, and simply cannot do that under the 218 process under a realignment because that wouldn't say that we're continuing to subsidize. So being that it couldn't be corrected in the first year, we recognized the impact of this, and the staff went and looked at different ways that they could help ease this in. And really the purpose of our industrial ratepayer assistance program is to provide temporary relief to the SIUs. So we worked with Jarvis Fay, LLP and NBS for, as a consultant. And basically the program highlights is we're using $2,180,606 of non-rate revenue. These are monies collected as penalties from industrial users exceeding their capacity under the TMC code 6-4-505. And only comes from these significant industrial users. Capacity is defined in their user waste charge permit, so if they exceed any of the three, so it's flow, BOD, TSS, based on their permit, then they're fined. It'll require a participation agreement, for each significant industrial user. The assistance will be 25% reduction in their total monthly sewer service at the new rates. It will really depend on the fund availability, so it's equitably applied across all the users. Their repayment terms are required only for violations of the agreement. No interest on repayment should they have repayment. It'll also require a legal waiver. Participants will waive their right to seek judicial action or to challenge the new rates. We anticipate this program will have enough monies to last about 6 months. In the event that there isn't enough money in the fund to give the full 25% at the end, it'll be equitably distributed based on the amount of money that's left until the fund is depleted. We asked the recommendation to the council is to approve the Industrial Ratepayers Assistance Program, authorize the city manager and the municipal services director to sign the agreements with the eligible users, and approve the funding allocations for the program implementation.
All right, for just the clarification, this is not some sort of surplus funding out of the general fund that you found in covering this, correct?
That is correct. It is purely supplied from industrial users based on penalties, based on their discharge permits.
Other questions of the director?
Well, that clarifies it. I just want to make sure that it passes all the tests with regard to the regulations. I mean, to be able to do that without having to come back and explain it later or pay big penalties.
Correct. It'd be considered non-rate revenue, which is.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll open it to the public. Anyone wishing to speak on this item? Yes.
I believe this is a good interim way of kind of alleviating some of their new fees. Not that their new fees are inequitable. They're perfectly equitable, as was brought up at our previous meeting. We are the ones who've been out of touch with reality. The city of Turlock has been out of touch with reality because we've been allowing them to pay less than they should have been paying. And if you look at it competitively, this was done over the entire Central Valley, or most of the rates were compared with other cities nearby. So it's not like these people are going to be moving to a new location. They would not find lower rates anywhere. We had the lowest rates. So we were the ones who were the people that were promoting this inequity. But again, it wasn't intentional. It was just overlooked. And now we're going to make sure that it's not overlooked. And that's important. So this is a good thing. I mean, let them use this and let it help them. But I think even saying it's 217% of an increase, again, if they're a multi-billion or $1 billion manufacturer, what is that? What percent of their expenses is that? Is that 0.5% of their expenses for manufacturing, or is it 0.1% of their expenses for manufacturing, or is it 5% of their expenses for manufacturing? You've got to look at everything overall. You can't just focus on one portion of it. But anyway, this is a good program, and I support this program. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we will close the public comment and bring it back.
I just wanted to make a quick comment to highlight a few things that Director Fisher, you talked about, that, and the other questions were, that this is only funding coming from industrial users' fees, paying for their phase in to this. And that the legal process that we had to go through, we had to change the rates at this time, as soon as we knew it. But to fix those inequities, but our financial picture meant that we had to do this when we were, got to hear lots of industrial users talk about this is a financial burden. We had to make these changes January 1 to make sure that our sewer system had the money to continue to operate efficiently. So I commend staff for working with, legal counsel to figure this out and talking to the industrial users to try to make the best of a situation with what we had. So thank you.
Is that a motion?
And it is a motion. Thank you.
Second.
You guys didn't do it in stereo. We have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes 5-0. Thank you, Director Fisher.
Thank you.
All right, Director Dami, item B. 9B, public, or I'm sorry, not 9B, 10B. And a Zoom. These two, and then that was the motion.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, City staff, and members of the public. My name is Jessie Dami, HR Director. The item before you this evening is a request of City Council to approve an agreement between the City of Turlock and Genesis Behavioral Center in the amount not to exceed of $642,500 for personalized repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation, also referred to as PRTMS, for public safety personnel within the police and fire department of the City of Turlock. Funded by the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, at a 1-year agreement. The program would provide public safety personnel the opportunity to participate in a confidential volunteer program dedicated to emphasize clarity, high achievement, and performance potential of the brain in their challenging jobs and daily lives. With that said, I have the privilege this evening to introduce in a moment to you Dr. Kevin T. Murphy, the originator and subject matter expert. Dr. Murphy will provide a brief presentation and will be available to answer any specific questions related to the program. Staff bring this to your attention this evening in an effort to provide public safety a program to enhance job performance as stated in their challenging jobs. At the conclusion of the program, staff will report back if the program is successful. Dr. Murphy, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Murphy.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I've been welcome in the city of Turlock. This is my third time. I appreciate everyone's attention and their help getting this.
The floor is yours.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, Dr. Murphy, the floor is yours if you want to give a brief presentation.
I'll share. If I share a screen, will it be visible to the room?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Is my screen showing?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again. I'll do this quickly. We've been talking with the city for about a year or more about this idea of bringing this technology into the city, first for the first responders, and then ultimately for more public health access. PRTMS is a process of delivering a non-invasive light brain stimulation to our patients. It improves performance and optimizes brain health. Been doing this with the DoD for quite a long time, and we continue to work with other state agencies to get this out to more people. This is the electroencephalogram we take. It's a Bluetooth wireless, quick 5-minute survey of the brain pattern. Then plot that data and show our providers and our patients this picture of their brain. The blue is the front of the brain, the green is the middle, and the red and orange is the back. And the peak frequency is being shown here. Each area has a certain function. We process that data in the cloud using a DoD server that I use with Walter Reed and other military facilities. So that's a very secure server, to electronic medical record. And the information then flows to our providers who will then treat the patient. This is the device we'll be using. It's in Sacramento and Turlock, and in Fresno, there'll be one, and also in Modesto. These are off-the-shelf FDA-approved devices for this therapy. We tend to see a lot of noisy signal in our first responders who have tough schedules and nighttime routines. We like to tune this brain. You can see here an example of a brain being tuned from left to right in about 6 weeks. That patient has much better sleep, better decision-making. Anxiety is the big problem. The red box shows you an anxiety patient who we can remove that anxiety in these folks very quickly in about 3 or 4 weeks. So there's published evidence to all this we showed last time in detail. I won't do that today, obviously. There's concussion papers we published. The Stanford VA and I published this paper on PTSD for combat veterans. And autism paper recently came out showing the benefits in autism. We've treated about 23 or 4,000 patients now across the globe, and over 80,000 EEGs have been analyzed. This is about 500 people a day receiving care. In California, it's largely based. These are all locations using our technology, and really the Modesto Center is going to have a lot of excitement for us because unlike the other programs we're doing with other states like Florida, which we'd like to do in California, we want to bring the mobile model into this process and have a delivery system where the machine is delivered to the fire station or the sheriff location, as opposed to bringing those providers or those patients to us. And this is a very quick, easy way to get access, I think. And I think going forward, it's a way to show access to those who are in need, who can't get to a doctor or have trouble with their transportation. Last thing I'll say is that this is all about performance for this group. The Air Force Research Lab has funded research for us on improving behavioral, cognitive, and psychological performance enhancement. That's really the first step, is getting the team members in their best mindset. Walter Reed is doing a study at the moment on this technology for chronic pain, funded by the DoD, and we're enrolling patients as we speak. And a few other institutions like Rockefeller Neuroscience is also working on this performance idea and sleep quality. We also have a study at ASU that's going to be enrolling patients with autism. The FDA has said this is a safe process. We've been called a non-significant risk device. And we have a client profile that includes football teams, other professional athletes and musicians and so forth. I'll be going to Poland to work with the special operations in Poland, the European Football League, and there's quite a bit of interest internationally in this work. The opportunity finally is improve brain health, improve the performance with a non-drug therapy. We're very excited to bring a non-drug option. Focus improvement, decision-making improvement. Sleep quality seems to improve across the board in our patients. I think this leads to better recruitment and retention of staff, taking the brain really seriously, and finding ways to non-drug ways to help treat those patients. And then those struggling with addiction, homelessness, and other behavioral mental health problems clearly is the next step. I think the opportunity here again in Turlock is that we have a center already existing. So these facilities are already in existence. The doctors, the therapists, the machines are in place. So there's no money being spent on the facilities. The plans to treat 50 first responders and city employees. And at 6 to 12 months, we'll do interval evaluation, come back to this committee and show them the results that we've seen and share that with leadership. And then of course, discuss other expansion ideas into the larger population. So that's really all I had to show. I'm happy to take any questions from those in the room and get this program going as soon as we can.
Questions for Dr. Murphy? Question?
Well, a question or more of concern when we're talking about spending this kind of money with something that I think the feedback that I've gotten from constituents is that this is in a lot of ways experimental. It certainly is not what you would call mainstream. I mean, our employees are covered with workman's comp, with employee assistance programs, with their health benefits that the city is paying a big percentage for. I'm not convinced that this is something we should be spending this kind of money on right now.
Well, let me address that for a minute. This is not experimental. So meaning there's no study being done. There's no risk to the patient outside of these FDA-approved devices. So these are all FDA-approved treatments that are going on across the nation, across the globe. So there's not really an experiment. We treated 20-some thousand patients in 25 states. The DoD is doing studies, though, to look at the efficacy in certain disorders like chronic pain and opioid addiction and certain areas to get FDA approval for those indications. But the therapy itself is an FDA-approved device that's been out for 25 years. So this is not an experimental idea. I appreciate your concern. And
let me ask you directly, then what is it that you're going to be treating our first responders for?
Well, we treat the brain. We're not really treating, I'd say PTSD is a common problem amongst that group. Anxiety states are a common problem. Sleep disorder is probably the most common problem. So those are areas we'd focus on. I think sleep improvement being across the board, something we see improvement across the board in our patients being the most important thing. Some of the schedule won't allow us to get, a perfect outcome because they're going to keep on their schedules. But we have to reset the brain and calm the system. And this is doing this in a very quick way. And it's been, like I say, proven at multiple locations here. I think the opportunity for Turlock is to bring this to your sheriffs and your first responders.
I have some questions for staff. Director Dami, you said that the funding source for this is ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act. And perhaps this is a question for you or Director Moreno, but when we have to report to the federal government about how we're using our ARPA funds, can you please clarify what the category or kind of how we're justifying this?
Is that a question for me or for the room?
Oh, feel free.
No, it'll be for Mr.
Well, I mean, the process is called TMS.
Oh.
TMS is an FDA-approved thing. So you're talking about treating a population who's at risk, who are on the front lines, and we're trying to show that mental health is a real issue, and we know it is. And talking about mental health and having talk therapy is a standard of care. It's not working. And I think what you're saying is you're taking this a bit more seriously. We're going to examine the brainwave pattern and look at the same results we published elsewhere, saying, can we reproduce these results clearly in this environment, which we feel confident we will. The same exact techniques are being used that we used for the PTSD study and for these other observations in concussion. So I think brain health is what it's about. It's about mental health in general, and the populations we're talking about are not prone to ask for help. And so we get in trouble then with bad decision making, family problems with the folks, and some other issues with these personnel. So I think this is a way to stand out and say we're taking this seriously.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy. I assume you can hear me, right? I don't know how the.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I have a few questions for our staff in the room directly. So thank you for that clarification. Director Moreno, can you answer this question?
Sure, council member. So under the ARPA regulations, you understand there's the final rules and different documents we gotta go through. Public safety is directly called out. In this section of what we're referring to is basically the retention and also public benefit to the public safety sector itself. So going through the final ruling, you can stipulate that it calls out public safety personnel providing work retention intensives as well. So we're filing under that.
Thank you. And when we talk about ARPA, there's been many different final rules that come out. Public safety, you can do a lot of things underneath that, but you can do a lot of, we have a lot of latitude to do many different programs for different policy areas, correct?
You definitely can. There's different sectors in which you can take that infrastructure for water or sewer or different public interactions in which the government does. Whenever an item like such as this is brought to my attention, we go through the final rules and regs, we go through all our information to make sure we can classify it properly, not only just for a reporting standpoint, to make sure that we're spending this money accordingly.
Thank you, Director Moreno. And then I think this is probably going to be for Director Dami, that if we're talking about this from retention, in your capacity as our HR director, when we are doing recruitment, when we're doing employee reviews, exit interviews, is the city hearing from anybody that like this type of policy, this program is what people are looking for when they're making their employment decisions?
So we're always thinking outside of the box, when it comes to recruitment and retention. This program was introduced to me as far as an item to bring forward to you this evening by City Manager Regan Wilson.
And while we're thinking about retention, has the city engaged in an RFQ process or something else for other type of employee benefits that can, have a track record of impacting employee retention positively?
So our focus at this moment is public safety, staff within the police and fire department. So we proposed this, again, through the direction of City Manager. Have we looked at other programs? To answer your question on the RFP, no, we have not gone through that.
Question for Director Moreno. What is our balance currently on the ARPA funds, and what will be remaining after we utilize this?
Sure. We did a recalculation this morning, trying to clean up some of the older items and where that dollar amount fits. We're pretty close, just over 1.6. So those will bring us close to about 1 million available.
This will leave us around
$1 million.
left.
That's correct.
And then are we going to be seeing that coming up?
Yes, we're going to be having a conversation most likely next month, so that we can get in place the tools that we need, the contracts that we need to make sure we secure this dollar amount so we don't lose it.
Plenty left to do things with after this is.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Dr. Murphy. Dr. Murphy, a few years ago, we had a firefighter fall from a first-story floor, and then about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we had a police officer involved in a Petey Brad car crash. Both of those people, both of those employees received concussions. And so can you talk about how PRTMS can treat concussions and head injury, please?
Sure. So this somebody that was our evidence, this PTSD patient here had a concussion as well. You get a very disrupted brain pattern, like taking your computer and smacking it on your desk. You lose some of the fidelity in the system. On the left, you see a wave pattern that shows that disruption. And in the middle here, you see that waveform being reestablished. So we track the symptom scores while we're doing this and watch the scores go down. And we do that on an iPad and with a set of standardized tests. And the point is to show that as they get the daily therapy, it's a daily therapy for about 5 to 6 weeks, that we see their scores get better. And all that information will be brought back to this committee at some point. Here's the actual data. It's all de-identified, so no patient names are used, but it will show that they received this therapy, how many therapies they received, and how their symptom scores went down. And then we'll take a quality of life survey as well for those groups to show what we will perceive as improved quality of life. But concussion is one of the most common things that we treat. Our series had 300 patients in it, a very large series. At Harvard, we're doing a study at Mass General in Boston on TBI on this very thing in a randomized way with PTSD veterans. Really, the exposures that the first responders have is very similar, mimics the veterans' exposure. And they have similar sleep disruption, anxiety, so we're kind of excited to get that done because most concussion, this is not treated. It's a matter of waiting and avoiding light and resting. The same thing we did 2,000 years ago. This actually tries to fix the brainwave pattern that's disrupted by the concussion.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
A question with long-term, if, you treat somebody for 4 to 6 weeks, once or every day for 4 to 6 weeks, what is the data showing you 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 5 years from now? Is it something that you've got to maintain? Is it an ongoing therapy like an antidepressant medication or something like that? If you're a first responder that is repeatedly exposed to the same unfortunate circumstances day after day after day after day, is this something that is a lifelong treatment, or do you or 4 to 6 weeks and they're good for life?
Well, no one's ever good for life. I wish we could say you just tune somebody up and they're tuned forever. That's never the case. It's an example showing you another concussion example. Can my screen be seen?
Yes.
From left to right, you see this concussion being realigned. If we stop at 3 weeks, we don't see the benefits that we're getting at 6 weeks. In this case, I can see that the brain has more room for improvement. I can also see some areas don't respond, and that this area in PH is not responding, and the patient has ringing in the ear still. So sometimes they're not getting a complete response. If I do nothing with that patient and they go back to their job, you might see this area start to fall back toward the middle. It's unlikely to go back toward the concussed state on the far left. My quick response for you would be the majority of patients maintain their benefit as long as they're not severely damaging their brain. But sleep deprivation is a big problem and creates disruptions. So we also want to look at that and decide how can we do better to give these guys better sleep and shifts that allow them to have less of that disruption. I treat the UFC, I treat fighters, and they go back and fight. And they come to me and say, it didn't last. And I said, well, what'd you do when you left my office? You got kicked 50 times. That could be it. So part of it is, how do we treat our brains when we're not on station? And there's education that we do with our patients talking about sleep hygiene and ways to maximize their brainwave when they can. But they're living in a very tough environment. But this is why we're here. We need to treat the ones that are are fighting on the front for us, who are being exposed like this. And again, I'll say I've had some good conversations with a lot of your folks there already, the sheriffs and some of the police, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. When they're privately with me, God, we need this thing. We need something like this. I don't have people that are going to go look for this help. If you provide it to us and make it a performance tool, we're going to go for that. And that's why we're calling it a performance enhancement, which really it is. And that's how the DoD defines it as well when we do our studies with the Air Force Research Lab. It's all about performance improvement.
So, Dr. Murphy, to reiterate that last question, though, so obviously it makes sense that if, someone is traumatizing their brain, they're going to need more treatment. But what of the patients who are being treated for performance-related things? After 6 weeks of treatment, do they need treatment again at 6 months or a year? Or, take the UFC fighters out of this equation. The employees that we're going to be treating, how often do they need to be retreated?
Well, I think a good answer would be about 80% of the time in our experience, the results we have are global. I'll give you an example here of ADHD. You can see the ADHD patient here with the top 2 leads being absent. This may have been lifelong. lifelong ADHD. In 4 weeks, we could turn on regions that were off and remove the ADHD and the need for stimulants. A lot of our first responders are taking Adderall and Vyvanse and stimulants to keep going, and then they can't sleep even worse because they're on stimulants. So even if you can remove some medication management and replace it with the waveform, you'll find improvements, I think, in their long-term, retention and success and good decision-making. In every case, as we age, all of our brains keep moving left and slowing down. And so we're always fighting gravity. But when I was giving a lecture to a psychiatric community meeting, I had that question asked, Dr. Murphy, how long is it going to last? And I said, how long does your Ativan last? And how long does the narcotic last? 4 or 6 hours? You're fine giving that for life. Here we are probably getting out there 6, 9, 12 months and showing that it's durable in the majority of those folks. And then what I would suggest is that clearly we're going to come back to this group and show the actual data and show everyone what we think we found in terms of our success. We have charts and graphs that we'll make that show the outcomes of our treatment. And I'm happy to make sure that that's shared properly. We'll have concussion data, if they have concussion, showing how they change their scores, their sleep insomnia scores, we can track those. So we'll track the sleep, anxiety, depression, and performance measures. And then I think the quality of life scale is really important to show that we're improving quality of life.
Other questions? All right, Dr. Murphy, what's going to happen now is I'm going to open it to the public. People are going to ask questions, but I will refrain from having you speak until after they are all done asking questions, okay?
Okay, so we know.
You got it. All right, I'm going to open to the public now. Anyone wishing to speak? Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Murphy, I did attend your presentation across the street here from our city hall, and I found it to be very vague. I found it to be very confusing. I didn't see where it was at all very scientific, and I was really disappointed. I could not see how you could justify this. You were just bringing up charts, like you were making charts, like it was not rational, it was not scientific that I could see at all. And I also found an interesting thing. I had talked to several of our public safety people, and I heard a statement from someone that said that they're interested in this, or this is something they would I've not found any of our public safety people who are willing to put their brain under the stress or under this test because it is unproven. You didn't even prove that it was scientific. It's experimental, but why should we be spending as a city money on something that's not even scientific so that you can do experimentation? I find that a very poor choice for our council to be approving this amount of money for something that has not been proven, and that what I can see, our public safety people are not interested in it. I do know that our city manager was very interested in it. He's the only one I talked to at the meeting who was interested in it. And I'm just kind of curious as to how you're going to justify this. It's basically just anecdotal information. There is no science behind it from what I could see, and that's very disturbing. I think it would be a good idea for us to find some other method that would be presented to us maybe by our public safety, fire and police, and see what they think they've heard of as being successful. The only success you mentioned in the entire meeting was the success of your son, and I'm very happy that your son was successful in this procedure, but that's out of 20,000 people. That was the only example you gave of success. That's very disturbing. We don't have a lot of money, and we don't want to spend our money except for something that's proven, not something that's experimental. And I am opposed to this, and I hope that this council will realize that this is really not something we need to spend our money on now. Thank you.
Anyone else? John? This is not extra credit.
Extra credit right here, girl?
No. Okay, respectfully, Dr. Murphy, I'm happy for your son, but I feel like that is also biased. The fact that you treated your own son and you are a doctor yourself, there's no way we could know that it genuinely helped your son. It's only based off of what you're saying, and it is a lot of money going into like the proposal and stuff like that. But as like the council members were also asking the questions, I feel like you didn't give a clear answer on the fact of like how this is gonna help like our EMS and like police, etc. Because if they're going to go into like different situations that's gonna hurt them mentally, I feel like they should have more of a say rather than different like pitch proposals that have bias behind it.
Thank you. John?
John Gebeline. The one question I would ask the council, since this is free money, right? I mean, it's not out of our budget or anything else like that. The government went and printed a bunch of money and says you can go use that funny money and you can do it. That's great. But you have to ask yourself, if it wasn't for that, would you take money out of the Turlock budget to fund this? Now, I can't tell you. I just don't think that, the city of Turlock should be going in for something unless it's absolutely, if it was something that was a proven, absolutely, scientifically and done by all of the things, Walter Reed and all the places that we have in the federal government that has used it. And PTSD is an absolutely horrible problem for lots, not for soldiers and firemen and especially policemen. And there's nobody here that would say that's great. We need to help them and everything else like that. But I don't want to be giving any money away. I don't care if it's free money. And just ask yourself, would you be giving this money out of our budget to do something that the federal government and all of the things that go through universities and everything else to prove all this stuff? That's what it should be. They should prove it that it works, and then if it works, let's give them money to help it. I'll give $20. I always say I always say, you laugh. I say I'll give $20 for anything that I think is worthy of it, and if somebody can show me that it's been proven that it's really worthy of it, I'll chip in the money. I have no problem with that. So, but just think about that.
Anybody else? Come up, please, then.
Dr. Murphy, can you hear me?
Again,
So I finally found this treatment, and it states that unless my information is wrong, this treatment is not FDA approved, correct?
Hang on, we're not going to answer right now.
Yeah,
Dr. Murphy, hang on.
yes.
We're going to answer after everybody else has a question. So go ahead, ma'am. Any other questions you have for him?
Has the treatment been evaluated by the FDA?
Yes, and I'm a little confused myself by some of the comments that there's not evidence and not science. I don't know. If you look at who's on these papers, we have every one of the largest institutions on these studies publishing results in peer-reviewed journals. So there's a peer-reviewed journal, 3 publications right here that I did show, which I'm just not understanding the scientific argument. But I'm appreciating your feedback. The FDA has looked at this clearly and said for Walter Reed, we're going to do this in a randomized way, where in randomization, it means some patients don't get the therapy and some do. And in the retrospective analyses, we don't want to not do that for persons in Turlock and so forth. We're not testing it. So I heard the word experiment being used multiple times. There's no experiment. So this is FDA approved work, and we're just applying this toward the folks that are in Turlock. So a non-significant study is what this was deemed to be when it went to Walter Reed, and the government's already vetted this. Our software is already vetted through the government, and Walter Reed is the one who's doing the work. The largest military hospital in the United States has funded this and spent millions of dollars putting money in to have a big production done so we can get a larger view. In the meantime, we're treating folks and across the country at the places you saw, and Hope was here to bring this to Turlock. I think the outcome measures, again, are important. I don't think that there are good current remedies for the stressors that our first responders are facing.
Right. The only
Okay.
question I had was
Just real quick, Dr. Murphy, we're going to hold off on you answering any more of the questions. We'll
Okay.
do it. If you have any more questions to ask,
no.
he's just not going to answer right now. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Come on up. Mr. Malik.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, Mr. City Attorney, city staff, I guess everybody else that's here. Dr. Murphy, thank you so much for taking the time to come and answer our questions. I'm a little confused as to how the technology actually works. So for each appointment, when you come in and you put the device on your head, does it just give you a general map of your brain and then you go over processes to kind of improve the brain waves that you currently have, or does the technology serve to stimulate the brain waves in the current moment?
He'll answer.
It amplifies.
Dr.
You want me to answer?
Murphy, we're going to hang on. Don't answer his questions right now. You're going to answer all at the end if you would, please, sir.
Okay,
Thank you. All right, no other
Okay.
questions.
Great.
Anybody else? Ron? We're almost done, Dr. Murphy.
Or at least you're letting me ask a question or two. Thank you. Yeah, I have mixed feelings. I mean, I can see how our first responders, some of the things that they have to deal with, you know, I can see how that creates trauma. And if that can be treated, I would be all for it. Also, do want to remind that this would be done with ARPA funds, so that if it does work, then next year there won't be ARPA funds. Okay, we'll have to find funding from another source, so just be aware of that. Yeah, long-term benefit, like Councilman Bixel brought up. Are we going to retest each of the clients after 6 months and 12 months to see what their response is? And for police officers and firefighters who have to go to traffic accidents, see people's bodies mangled, so on and so forth. I mean, that might happen to them multiple times. Would they need to, again, go through this type of treatment? Myself personally, I'm leery of, you know, how much do we actually understand the brain? And going and using drugs, I'm leery about that. If I understand this treatment right, you're using microwaves to alter the brain in some manner. And I guess I would also say, you talk about the military, so on and so forth. Okay, I would feel much better if you could give examples that, you know, police and fire in multiple cities had done this, and this is the result that they got. That would make me feel much better about it. Okay. And have any other cities in Stanislaus County use this? And I don't know if we want to hear from the first responders who, according to the staff report, there was, what, 27 first responders, I think, that said that they were interested. Don't answer.
Thank you.
That were interested. So those are my comments.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Mr. Turlock Journal. This never happens.
Don't say never. Joe Cortez with the Turlock Journal. Dr. Murphy, to clarify, are you saying that all of Turlock's first responders, sight unseen, are absolutely in need of this therapy? I guess I'm looking for a distinction. Are they absolutely in need of this therapy, or would they merely benefit from this therapy?
Got it.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? No, I'm sorry, Mary, not you. This young lady first put her hand up.
I just wanted to ask if there's any side effects from this treatment, and if so, what are they, and how severe are they?
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary.
Good question.
Dr. Murphy, I'm Mary Jackson. Thank you for taking more questions. I think the hardest thing for anyone to wrap their head around is that we really need to see, if you've done this at Walter Reed, how many people were treated and what the numbers were that showed that they had improvements. If you can't show those kind of results or give us, and I understand HIPAA, I understand what the limitations are, but even if you're working with NCAA teams, they have a lot more money than we do. And I have the same concerns that we're using one-time money to look at something that is very, very expensive, in my opinion. That's maybe you might be on the cutting edge, but right now, I believe our officers have access to counseling. I would think mental health. And I just am really leery about spending ARPA money, again, one-time money on something that is very expensive, and that I haven't seen the results. I've talked to my neighbors and friends, and everyone's a little bit shaking their head. It's not that we don't support our police here in Turlock. We just want to make sure that our money is spent wisely. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we're going to close public comment. So, Dr. Murphy, we'll go back to the beginning and talk about the not scientific or unproven FDA or bias. Can you kind of just wrap that up?
Yeah, I mean, is that, Amy, I mean, you're asking me, I don't, when you write papers, you have to engage academic institutions, and we did that. And when Stanford and VA and other people come onto your study, they're memorializing the fact that they think your evidence is real. So I'm not sure what else, how else persons define science, but that's about as scientific as you can get. We treat patients, took their outcomes, and monitored and published that work. When you treat patients like this, the question was asked, how do you amplify signal? We're taking the waveform and amplifying it and improving their meditative state, essentially. We find your meditative state and we copy it. And that's that's the effect happening scientifically. This is the brain being treated, showing you in the bottom right how the brain wave changes while we treat. And most of us, we don't have a nice perfect waveform. And the goal is to help create that perfect palm waveform.
And that's through a microwave, sir?
Not microwave. So this is micro current stimulation. So your brain's electric, and so is this. There's no microwave.
I'm just asking the questions, not my fault.
Right.
So as far as retesting, do you do a retest at 6 months or 12 months, or how does that look?
So every week when the patient's been treated, they fill out a standardized test of anxiety, depression, sleep, and it would be a quality of life scale. And we monitor those reports. We put those into a Excel spreadsheet, and we monitor their change over time. And then, of course, we bring the patient back at 3, 6, 9 months and show the durability of the response.
And pursuant to our local newspaper, do you see it as an absolute need or a benefit for public safety, which is fire, dispatch, and police?
Well, you don't know if someone has a need until they sometimes take care of business themselves and do something like, inappropriate or hurt themselves. And we see it happen all the time. And there are fire chiefs and there are police officers that take their own lives. So we're not talking about, in every case where it's necessary. Not every firefighter, not every person needs this therapy. But it should be available to those, in my view, if they want to try to have a non-invasive, non-drug way to help their brain health. And that's, so I think it's that the question was asked, does every person need this? No. Does every person want to take this? Of course not. And it's a voluntary thing for those that are seeking help. Right now, when they seek help, they get drugs and talk therapy. And I think we can all agree that has very limited success.
How about side effects? If there are any, what would they be?
Sometimes a little irritability or agitation from the treatment is the most common, where we turn on areas that were sleepy, and that can create irritability in some patients. But I've not seen in our 20-some thousand patients any long-term side effects, and the reported evidence in thousands of TMS papers do not show lasting side effects.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Mr. Malik asked about mapping out the brain.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tell doctor.
Dr. Murphy, we had a constituent ask about, you probably heard the question, it was Mr. Malik, about does it give you a map of the brain or what does it do? I think that's geared toward the actual EEG process.
So the question is, how does the EEG work? Or
How do you know what to do with the EEG?
so the data, well, I've been doing this for, we have 80,000 examples, 80,000 EEGs we've been processing for 12 years. And it goes through a electronic medical record system into a algorithm which helps select desired frequencies we think help improve the size and shape of that waveform. So it's really a math basis treatment. We look at your brain math and we magnify your proper wave, the calm wave, and we take out the noise in the system. That makes sense.
Other questions or comments now? No, go ahead.
Well, in my little bit of trying to do some research, I was unable to find any published double-blind studies to prove your outcomes, number one. Number two, my understanding is that the TMS is FDA approved, but PRTMS is not FDA approved.
So to answer these questions?
Sure. It's just the board now, just us with you. Yes.
Yeah, the P means personalized, which means personalized medicine. You've gone to your doctor and your doctor says, try 10 milligrams. It doesn't work, they say try 15. That's now personalizing off-label, and that's what this is. So the dose is being personalized to the patient based upon their response, and that's really how all doctors practice medicine. You keep giving dose till you get a good response, or you change your dose or change your drug. In this case, the frequency and the stimulation intensity is adjusted based upon response, which is the exact way we practice medicine. So the TMS device itself is FDA approved, the EEG cap's FDA approved, and so this is not an experimental idea. The randomization of double blind tries to rule out bias. And that's what the Walter Reed study is doing. It's what the Harvard study is doing, where they do a big randomized test. And right now there's retrospective data that's voluminous, and that's what leads to randomized tests. If the delta in the outcome is so great, like we're seeing, then the randomization actually has less and less value, because we're not looking for a p-value. We're seeing 20, 30 point drops in their symptoms.
Comments? Go ahead.
I think undoubtedly this is intriguing. The brain is an amazing organ. I work a little bit in this space. There's extremely plastic, and obviously mental health can have a huge impact on quality of life. But I come back to, we are supposed to be considering policy for the betterment of the whole community. And I am not seeing that this proposal for a brain enhancing treatment, which is not being widely done at all of your doctor's offices yet. I don't think that's an appropriate use of public funds right now. We're being told that this is a retention tool, and yet the city's not hearing from current or past employees through exit interviews or prospective employees that this is something that's a top priority for them. I think wellness, quality of life is important, but retention comes down to compensation. And I definitely want to retain our highly trained, competent, dedicated staff. And yeah, I absolutely, our staff who is answering 911 calls and going to these incredibly urgent, tragic events have intensely stressful jobs. And we're talking about ARPA here, so this kind of brings in the COVID part of it. Then you throw in a pandemic in there, and it's the stakes are even higher. So I have a problem with setting aside $600,000+ of ARPA funds for this, even if we have $1 million left. that $600,000 is not a small chunk of things. You know, that money, rather than set it aside for this contractor to provide this very specific benefit that is going to cost $13,000 per person who can do it, I'd rather give it to the employees directly. We can do that through ARPA. It's called hazard pay, because I trust that our public safety could do with these funds what's right for them and their families, whether it be PRTMS or something else. You know, and we're talking about funding sources. We have a lot of latitude with ARPA funds. We could spend it on brain enhancing treatments, or we could divert this money to sidewalks on the west side, or to help seniors on fixed incomes fix up their housing. We can do that too. We could invest in our you know, very old fire infrastructure at our fire stations. All of that's allowed with ARPA, and the list goes on and on of what we could do with this. So this is not the right move for Turlock. I don't think this is the right move for our COVID relief funds. And I think that our council should be looking for other proposals that would, you know, impact our community more.
Comment, Councilman? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, all of our first responders were out working during COVID, and I would guess that probably almost 100% of them got COVID. So this really does have some COVID merit to it. I did a little research myself. The National Institute of Health says that the suicide rate for police officers is 29% higher than the average person, and the fire department is 39% higher than the average person. Depression rates in fire and PD are double the general population. Firefighters have a 20% chance of having post-traumatic stress disorder. 40% of firefighters have sleep deprivation or a sleep disorder, and 80% of them don't even know that they have it. 40.4% of police officers have at least one sleep disorder. So you're talking about a lot of our people that could have, based on the National Institute of Health, have sleep disorders, have problems. Dispatchers, 24% of dispatchers have PTSD, and 24% have major depression. If that many of our first responders are susceptible to mental problems, I don't see how we can say that giving them the ability, and they don't have to go. If they have the ability to go and it helps them, I mean, saving one life could be worth $600,000, but saving the sanity and giving these people sleep, as a person that has suffered from sleep deprivation for many years, this would be a godsend. So I am absolutely for our first responders, giving them, excuse me, the ability to try it.
Councilmember?
Thank you. This is, and Dr. Murphy, thank you for all the information. You know, folks, it's easy to attack something when you don't know enough about it, or to be opposed to something when you don't know enough about it. I did receive the invitation from Genesis to go tour the facility. I didn't do it because I'm familiar with TMS because of my day job. And I want to give two examples of two clients that are juveniles and on my caseload at work. But I want to preface this with, I really hope this isn't taken out of context on social media later, because I don't want people screaming that our police officers are suicidal, because that's not what this is about. So I have a 16-year-old juvenile on my caseload. He has been in foster care since he was 4 years old. He was extremely suicidal, to the point where my judge ordered here in our county PRTMS treatment for him. 6 months later, the boy is no longer suicidal, pulling straight A's down at school and living a normal life. I had another young lady on my caseload. She's now 14. I got her when she was 11. She had not slept in weeks. She had the blackest circles under her eyes. Doctors were loading her up with lithium drugs because they swore she was manic. Okay? She's 11 years old. She had a problem. TMS fixed her problem. She is living a normal life now. UCLA is using TMS right now to treat a myriad of things for first responders, one of them which is tinnitus. Anybody ever had ringing in your ears? Our first responders get that from the sirens in the ambulances and in the police cars and on the fire trucks. And so they're using TMS to treat tinnitus. I'm sure Dr. Murphy has treated people with tinnitus. And that's why I prefaced it about the suicide. This isn't just for suicide. Yes, our first responders are subjected to stress and anxiety, and they get into physical altercations that can, produce head injuries. This isn't experimental. It is working. It is cutting edge. And I want the best for our first responders. I will also tell you that I have had first responders contact me about this and go, hey, we want it, but we don't want our medical information out there because it's going in front of the public to the council. Yeah, I don't blame them, right? I wouldn't want to come forward and raise my hand in front of God and everybody too to say, oh yeah, I need it because I got this problem or this problem. It's medical information. So yes, we have people that need it. Is it 100% of our first responders? No, it's not. Most of our staff is fine, but the ones that need it, I want to be able to provide it to them.
Thank you for that. So as somebody who actually used it, I was a police officer for 23 years, primarily in Richmond, and I've spent a lot of time underneath large people, getting my head wrapped into the cement or whatever, because you got to fight people to get them in handcuffs. So I actually did this, and I want to tell you that I compartmentalized my life. With every incident, traumatic incident that ever happened, I just put it away and went along. At one point, in October of last year, I found out that the guy who wanted to kill me with an AK-47 was getting out way early, and it kind of nutted me up. First time I've ever felt like that because I was worried about you, the public. So I went through this whole process, worked with Dr. Murphy and Genesis, and I can't tell you, I had 40 years of migraines. 40 years of migraines, taking something every single day. I have no more headaches. I could sleep 1 to 2 hours. I sleep 8 to 10 hours now, and I don't care about the guy with the AK. So I want to do what's best for our public safety, and if they want to use it, I want them to have that opportunity. It is most important that they get what they need so that they can serve us the best they can and have good lives outside of their work.
I appreciate you telling us about your experience with that, and Councilmember Moniz, I appreciate you telling us about the children that you've encountered that have needed this. And I think my point is not that this is bad. This is fine, but why are we telling our public safety that this is the benefit that they should have? This is the thing that we're going to offer them. What if there's another treatment out there that will help them, that will reduce stress in their lives, that so they can, pay for whatever? Why are we saying that this is the one thing that we're willing to put money behind?
What we've said so far to this point to our public safety is go use our counseling. Really? I mean, they deserve more than that. This is your dispatcher who has to sit there and hear the most horrific call, hang up, not knowing what's going to happen because police or fire both got there, and then go on to the next one. It takes a toll on people's bodies, and you're all blessed not to have to experience it on a regular basis. But think of those who are, and think of the opportunity that we can help some of them who are willing to do it and do more than just have lip service, conversation, counseling. How do you feel? How do you feel about that? That's all we've ever done in the history of public safety.
And absolutely, I respect the work and the trauma and everything that you have had to encounter in this job. And yeah, I don't encounter that. I do eyeballs, but I think that it is presumptuous of us to say that we're going to fund this one particular thing when we have, Director Dami, I think I counted from our email conversation before, 128 public safety personnel that would be eligible for this.
Yes, it would be,
Give or take.
give or take.
Give or take. Let's say 130. That we could divide this 640 something thousand dollars by that amount and give everybody funding to go seek out whatever care that they deem fit for themselves and their families. And so that's where I'm coming from this. I think that our ARPA funds should be going to what benefits the whole community, and absolutely our public safety are part of our community and they serve our community and they deserve our help in any way that we can give it. But this one thing, because this is, you know, what someone brought forth and we're not considering anything else, I don't think that's appropriate.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
No.
Councilmember Bixel?
No.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, and it passes with the 3-2. We're going to take a 5-minute break and come back to 9B.
Was your door open?
Well, he said that the staff closed it, but they shoot a cat out of there too.
Okay, cool.
All righty, we're coming back. Mr. Morris. 9A is Mr. Morris. We got some speed traps here, speed limits here. Kidding.
Okay. I want to add city engineers to that list.
Brain, you did? Okay.
Brains, yeah, definitely. Good evening. I'm back, unfortunately, because as we were doing the adoption for the speed study, in the report, everything was correct.
Can you pull that up a little bit?
Report.
There, thank you, sir. Oh, goodness. Wow. Don't break it.
Testing. Okay. And one of the streets got deleted from going from 50 down to 45. It didn't get put in the 45 line. It went through the resolution. It's missing from the resolution. It is part of the study. It's in there. It's all there, except it didn't make it into the resolution. So that's what brings me back tonight, is to alleviate that problem and get that street, that one segment put back in, but also to create an ordinance and modify it to that when the speed studies come around and go through, it will become an exhibit. So when in the table, that in the ordinance, it lists the speeds, and you click on the link and it will go to the table, and the table will be there. So that's kind of what we're doing.
How did you notice it was eliminated?
How? I found it, unfortunately. After other people, 3 or 4 other people went through and looked at it, and they didn't notice that. And I just...
Good job.
So.
Other questions for Mr. Morris? Okay, we'll open it to the public. Anyone wishing to speak on that one street? All right, we'll close public comment, bring it back.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Pixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Morris. Mr. Petrolakis?
Mayor, on 9B, I have a conflict of interest. The developer is a client of my firm, so I did not participate in the matter, and I'll be stepping away for the hearing of the matter.
All right. And Director Werner, are you ready? Ma'am? Now that we don't have an attorney, you can do whatever you want. With Henry Eden.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and members of the public. Tonight, I'm bringing forth an item for a rezone and a planned development of a property at 337 West Avenue South. Let's see, maybe I'm not. Just kidding.
Well, I guess it's not happening today, Mr. Katakis.
No, it's just me.
You didn't pay
There
attention.
We need our IT to.
Okay, why is this fancy? Thank you, Madam Clerk.
There we go. So the property is located at 337 West Avenue South. That's kind of where that little red dot is. It's approximately 2.67 acres, and it's surrounded by residential to the north, to the east, and to the west. To the south is the railroad line, the Union Pacific Rail line, that is really not in use right now. But right south of that is another residential subdivision. What is coming before you is a request for a plan development for, to reduce the lot sizes, as well as have a reduction in setbacks for the houses. The plan development, the purpose of the plan development is to kind of have a mechanism for a project that doesn't necessarily meet our development standards, but that we would really like to see, and so we kind of help them along through that plan development. Because they're asking for the deviation in the sizes of the lots and the setbacks, we really think that that's a good way, a good use of using this, the plan development. The challenge of this lot is that it's long and narrow. It's approximately, it's like 600 feet long and 180 feet wide. So it's really a challenge. As you can see, it's really a challenge for them to develop the lots to our standard lot size for medium density, which is of 6,000 square foot lot. So in order for them to meet the density for that zoning district, as well as meet all the other development standards, setbacks and everything, they would probably reduce the number of lots for that subdivision to probably half in order to be able to meet all their development standards. So that's really the request for the planned development. Like I said, it is 639 feet long and 188 feet wide. They do have, as you can tell, a road that's going to be coming in from West Avenue South. And then toward the rear of the property is a turnaround or a T really for fire access. So if the fire truck comes down, they have a way to turn around. There will be no parking. It will be red curbed after the T. The section of the road after the T will completely be red curbed. There won't be any parking. It'll be signs so that there won't be any issues with fire coming in and out. The homes are, as you can, this is just a lot fit plan. We asked that for any subdivisions to show us that they can meet, the homes can meet and fit on the lot. So that's what this is for. They've given us 3 different types of homes with parking. They are showing a single-story homes and 2-story homes. They're also showing some recess parking as well as tandem and your typical, two-car garage. The single-story homes will have a front yard setback of 10 feet with a front yard setback for the garage of 25. And the comparison of that looks a little bit like this. So our standard lot size for medium density residential is 6,000 square feet with a 20-foot front yard setback and 10 feet on the side and 15 on the rear. They're requesting a reduction to a 10-foot front yard setback, 25 feet for the garage, which will give them a 20-foot driveway, which is our standard for most of our driveways. 3-foot side yards on the interior lot size, and a livable area of 10 feet. And what they mean by your livable area is we'll measure from the property line to the living area. So your porch, a patio cover, anything, that won't actually be what we were going to measure from. We'll measure from the property line to, say, where the living room starts, or the main portion of the house. We've also got the rear yard garage at 3 feet. The 2-story homes will have a 25-foot front yard setback with a front porch at 15 feet and a garage at 18 feet. They'll also have an interior 3-foot side yard setback and a 10-foot rear yard setback. So this is just kind of a narrative of what I just kind of spoke about the setbacks. Another constraint that this property has is being so close to having the railroad abutting the southern portion of the property. Our general plan requires that any what we call sensitive receptors, anybody where you're sleeping, you're going to be living, any houses or homes have to be at least 100 feet from that railroad. So again, with a width of 180 feet, if we took off 100 feet, they wouldn't be able to develop that lot at all. So what we do require is, and the general plan also requires a noise analysis. They did do a noise analysis. That line isn't used very often. So there was no requirement for them to have a masonry wall because there's no sound attenuation. We've also, also took into account, because there's no noise and the train doesn't come home, that we did make that determination that you can be within that 100 feet. But a lot of the narrow lots on that side of town have the same issue. So it's something that we do work with. The developer is coming through and trying to help them navigate that requirement or general plan. So again, this is the lot fit, And as you can see, again, the parking lots, the garages are set back on some, and then some are the typical. We did raise some concern that with the narrow entrance, the driveway or street that's going into the project, that, you know, there's the potential for most people to park on the side of the road in front of the house. So that was a concern that was raised. It's not really something that we can really legislate, people parking on, because you can park in front of your house, but it is something that the developer is aware of, and that any of the tenants are going to have to be aware of as well. If a fire truck comes down and they have to get in, they're going to have to get in. So there was one other thing I wanted to touch on, that we don't have any elevations right now. Typically, we do have conceptual houses that are going to be built for the subdivision. We don't have any at this point in time. The developer is not that far enough along. So any house plans that come through will have to go through the planning department to make sure that they fit our design guidelines, that they still fit on the lots, and it's a staff level approval. So we'll make sure that it fits in with our design guidelines, what's called out in our zoning ordinance and our general plan. And with that, if you have any questions, I can answer for you.
Questions for the director?
Yes, perhaps I missed it in the different diagrams, but do we know the combination of 1 stories versus 2 stories in this?
No, we don't, but the developer is here. He can probably answer that.
Okay. Any other questions for the director?
Ms. Warner, what did the planning commission say?
The planning commission, overwhelmingly, it was a 4-0-3 vote. We had 3 absent, but they did recommend approval are recommending that city council approve the rezoning. They did approve the subdivision map to divide the property into 30 lots, but that is contingent on your approval tonight.
Thank you.
All right, well, open to the public. Mr. Katakis, if you want to speak, you can. Okay.
Lady engineer, I like it.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Mallory Fenrich. I'm with North Star Engineering. As staff just described, this is a great infill project. It's bringing more affordable, by design, housing to the city, which is very much needed. I wanted to say thank you to staff. They've been great to work with in helping us move this project along and making sure that it's a quality project. We did want to add a couple things. The railroad is not operational. That was confirmed in the noise study. There is a sign on it that states that it is not in use, and there are no plans for the railroad for that section to become operational. Let's see, what else?
Coming
Did she
soon.
answer about the elevations, Cassie?
Yeah, we don't know the exact numbers yet, but to meet the PD standards and the design standards, it'll have to be a mix. The design intent is to create a nice pedestrian-oriented streetscape, so you need the mix of housing types. So we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Any other questions for?
Just size of the homes?
They range from just under 1,000 square feet to just over 2,000.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, we'll open it to the general public now. Anyone wishing to speak regarding this item? Milt?
Yes, as a 51-year resident of the west side, I've walked by this lot a lot of times. And it's like a lot of other lots on the west side. It's just a piece of open land that's full of weeds. And this is being very creative. This is a very creative way to use this existing infill property to build low-income houses on, or at least lower priced properties. And we have this all over the west side. Just a half a block from my house, there's been proposed a 5 units on a long piece of lot, a long lot. We've got a lot of these long, narrow lots that are very hard to utilize, and they're just growing weeds on them. And this is exactly what we want to do. We want to develop this infill because we already have the sewer, the water right there. And we can just connect up to it and we can provide housing that we need. And I would like to see this plus many, many more of these. I'm still waiting. I noticed there was someone out at down the street or down the block from me looking at this property today, and I think it was a city truck. So I hope they're getting ready to start the 5 building units right just half a block from me. Just this wasteland all over the west side, or all over, the west side. So this is an ideal thing that we can do, and we've done some of this also in District 1. They had some odd lots, and we're filling those out. And that's the whole thing. I mean, building housing that people can afford and filling in lots that are just weed patches. So I really think this is a great project. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll close the public comment. Mr. Katakis, you need to get rid of the weeds on your land, sir. Okay, thank you, appreciate that. All right, what's the will of council?
I just have some comments.
Okay, sure.
And I just want to thank Mr. Katakis. It's a beautiful project. We need more, so can you buy a few more of these in my district, please? And there hasn't been a train running down High Street since I was about 12 years old, because I used to have to wait for that train to get into Columbia Pool in the summertime, but it's long gone. But great job. We're grateful and looking forward to seeing it. Thank you.
Yeah, nice of you, nice use of the property. As a developer, that was brilliant. So the street, it works.
Yes.
Dewar Lane, which is in a few blocks from my house, it's a zipper. You go back and forth. You're nice to your neighbor, and you tell your neighbor, come on through, and you pull over if you can, and they pull over if they can. It works. All this 30 units on 2.67 acres equals lower cost on everything, which equals a lower house. So, good job.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Pixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, it passes 5-0. Thank you, Director. All right, we're going back here. We're at now.
10C.
10C. That sounds right.
Yeah.
And that'll be Mr. York.
Here he comes.
Oh, he was hanging out in the back.
Hiding out.
Just, here, do you want to go get Mr. Petrol?
Oh, yeah.
I don't want him having fun back there. Go ahead. We'll start without him.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you this evening would be an item for consideration for the purchase of 7 mid-size buses. The make and model would be the Arbach Spirito Mobility. We have some experience with those vehicles. We own several of them currently. This would be a replacement, not an expansion. If you recall, a few meetings ago, we actually did an expansion with some vans. This is truly replacing some vehicles that are reaching the end of their useful life. We're proposing to use a cooperative purchase agreement. So the bidding has already taken place. We're using that, sort of piggybacking off of that contract. The purchase price is a little over $1.8 million for the 7 vehicles. They would support fixed route and paratransit operations in the city of Turlock. They would be 100% funded by transit grant funds. So there's no general funds being used for this purchase. And should they be approved by the council tonight, we would place the order in the next couple days. They should be here in the next 12 to 15 months, which is a while, but that's sort of normal within the transit world. And that coincides more or less with the end of the useful life of our vehicles we look to replace. So all the other relevant details are in the staff report, and I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions?
Yes, so in the staff report, it talks about the mandate for zero emission purchases, 2026, 25% of our purchases have to be zero emission, correct?
Correct.
Is there mandates to have a certain proportion of our fleet be zero emission by a certain deadline, or it's just all purchasing what's being told to us?
Sure, good question. It is strictly purchasing. So once you have a vehicle, you're expected to use it for the end of its useful life. That's actually an FTA requirement if you're using federal funds. And even if you're not using federal funds, there's understanding at the state that you can use your vehicles as long as you have them. It's just that by 2030, 100% of your purchases have to be zero emission. And then they're anticipating by 2040, everything will be transitioned out at that point. Sure.
Other questions for Mr. York? Okay, let's open it to the public. Anyone wishing to speak? Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Pixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes. Thank you,
you.
Ms. Stewart. 5-0. All right, councilmember comments and announcements. Councilmember Abel?
I have item for consideration. Are we doing that now? Or
We can do it
just
all
comments?
together.
Okay, all right.
Let's group 'em.
The new order is throwing me off. So I have been following, I don't see Director Sims here, but I've been following at the end, thank you, you're sitting in a new spot. Anyway, since we approved it in late June, I've been kind of following up on what's happening with the small business development program. And for the numbers that I'm seeing where we're contracted to pay a certain amount, the businesses are not requesting matching funds. It appears that it's not getting the results that we want it to. So I would like that to be brought back for council consideration to see what we can maybe augment the program with. And I would, encourage my colleagues to look up what the city of San Luis Obispo is doing with their buy local bonus and their eat local bonus. I think those would be great improvements to the program. So I'd like to see that come back.
I'm sorry, Cassie, what city did you say?
City of San Luis Obispo?
Slow, okay.
Okay, so comments, announcements, and future consideration. Councilmember Biscoe?
I'll just say that everybody have a safe and sane Halloween. Be careful out there. We don't want to see you in the emergency room.
Good
Selfish.
point. Trick or treat at the open house, community safety facility at 244 Broadway on October 24th from 4 to 7. So we've got all kinds of fun stuff for the kids to do. Bounce houses, I believe, are out there, and candy galore. So bring your kids, wear costumes. Monster Inc., I believe, is the theme. Have a safe and happy Halloween. Also, November 1st is Diwali, so happy Diwali. Plan to attend the Veterans Day ceremony. The details will be on the city's website. It will be Monday, the 11th of November at 10 o'clock at the public safety facility parking lot. Be sure to vote November 5th. And leaf pickup begins on Monday, November 4th. And the details are in your utility flyer. And I would still like my spreadsheet pretty soon. Thank you.
They're passing it on. For me, I would first like to announce congratulations to Erica Phillips for second place. That's amazing. One of our downtown business owners just got she's a professional bodybuilder and got second. Next year she'll get first. I want to look into planning. I think that our businesses, small businesses, are waiting too long to get into a building and get permits and get taken. It seems like there's some circuitous route. If you get to the top and you have something wrong, which most everybody does, they go to the back of the line. So we're hoping that we can find something else to do there. I wanted to find out what happened to same-day permitting and the Tuesday something. See how we're doing on that, or what we're doing on that. And then also the status of the software for our online permitting. We talked about it. We're hoping to see what will happen with that. And then Turlock Journal, write this down. SRWA was less than 1% in change orders. So that's huge, huge.
That's big.
Yeah, so I just want to say congratulations to all that worked on SRWA for that.
And they're up for
And the award's coming, award pending. Madam Clerk, we have closed session.
Tonight for closed session, we have conference with labor negotiators, California Government Code 54957.6A. Agency designated representative is Acting City Manager Sarah Eddy. Employee organizations are Turlock City Employee Association, Turlock Firefighters Association Local 2434, and Turlock Management Association Public Safety. Item 14B is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, California Government Code 54956.9D2. Number of cases is 4.
All right, and we will report out should there be anything. If not, we'll see you in November. reporting out, we gave direction to council. That is all. We are adjourned.